there were several black activists, if you like, who visited London around that time, which was about the middle of the 60s. One of them was Martin Luther King, who I managed to photograph. I don't remember who commissioned the job, but he was on his way through London to pick up the Nobel Peace Prize in, where is it, in Norway, is it, or in Sweden? Wherever the Nobel Peace Prize is. Anyway, he was on his way through London to collect that, and he had a meeting which was attended by other peace activists, and one of the people at the meeting was a guy called Canon Collins, who was the chairman of CND, so it all fitted together. Martin Luther King went on to collect the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was unfortunately assassinated, I think, in 1968. Malcolm X, who came over in about, again, I think in 65, and he spoke to some small meetings in Notting Hill. Because I was living in Notting Hill and I was connected with the movement there, I got to photograph him at one of his meetings. And he was very sharp, very well spoken, polite, logical. You couldn't possibly call him a fanatic or an extremist, although probably that's what he would be called now if he was doing the same thing. But he came to speak under the aegis of a Muslim organization, which is local. And he spoke to a crowded meeting and was very well received. Unfortunately, a couple of months later, in New York, he was assassinated. And it was said that he sort of knew that that might happen to him. But America is America. When we assassinate people here, we do it much less frequently. Ronnie Scott's, which is about the leading jazz club of the day in London, or in England, they had a really benign policy towards a handful of photographers, of whom I was one. They never ever charged us to get into the club, because they knew that sooner or later the pictures we took would be published somewhere, and that would be good for them for publicity. There were other places too, which were good for photographing jazz, and one of them was when a TV company like the BBC did a series of jazz programs. People like sort of Buck Clayton, Dizzy Gillespie, Oscar Peterson, Louis Armstrong, you know, really big people in the jazz field. What I discovered was that if I could get to rehearsals, they were really the best possible opportunity for shooting jazz, because, first of all, if you're at a rehearsal, the director doesn't mind if you hear the occasional camera click, and you might occasionally stray into shot, but they didn't mind you being there as a photographer. And the other thing was that of course, they're extremely well lit. And if you like working in available light, which is what I used to specialize in, then a TV rehearsal is almost ideal. And what's more, you get to listen to the music. So once I discovered this, I made a beeline for the Shepherd's Bush Theatre, where the BBC was running a series of programs called Jazz 625. And I got many of my best jazz pictures from that series of programs. Well, there's one set of images that I'm very fond of, which they're Ringo Starr. The Beatles were rehearsing for a TV show called Jukebox Jury at the Teddington Studios. Teddington's on the River Thames, and they decided to arrive by riverboat, really to avoid the hysterical crowds of fans who seemed to follow them everywhere. So as they were coming off the boat, they had to run the gauntlet of hysterical fans and almost hysterical press photographers, plus one or two other people standing about. they had to run about 100 yards from the riverbank to the studio entrance. And I happened to be there also, being a paparazzo on that particular day. And they came bounding across the grass to the studios. But then something funny happened, and when I look back at it afterwards, I don't know what it was, but it was as if Ringo froze, as if he was in another world, because there are 3 successive frames, which have all got Ringo right close up in the foreground, looking sort of not blank, as if he's thinking he's somewhere completely different. And in each of the 3 pictures, the people in the background are different, but Ringo is just more or less at a still point of the turning world. It gives him the opportunity to be in front, which he very rarely was in those pictures. And also, it's as if he was listening to a different world. The other really good place to take shots of musicians, this time sort of rock and roll, was all-night concerts. There was one in particular I went to at the Alexandra Palace, which is a big hall in North London, or at least it was. It's been burned down twice since then. There was an all-night rock and roll show with many different people on the bill, including the Rolling Stones, and John Lee Hooker, John Mayall, Alexis Korner, Millie, the Jamaican singer, Jimmy Powell and the Five Dimensions, lots and lots of different musicians all having a good time. And the lighting there was really quite good, but, and this is a technical note, I had a very good 200mm lens. It's called a Zeiss sonar with a very wide aperture. It was about this big, the lens front, and it was very heavy. It was so heavy that in fact you could hold it quite still, and the shutter bounce hardly disturbed the lens at all because the lens had got such a lot of inertia. So it was very good for doing long shots of not very well lit people in bands.